For 3 decades, one secret sat at the heart of the Northern Ireland conflict. The true identity of a British intelligence source codenamed Stakeknife. There is now near universal agreement that Stakeknife was Freddie Scappaticci. He was a West Belfast man. He rose to a senior position inside the Irish Republican Army's internal security unit. That unit had a grim nickname of its own. Members called it the Nutting Squad. Its job was to root out informers within Republican ranks. The implications of this revelation for the Republican movement are staggering. The man tasked with catching informers was himself the most valuable informer the British state ever had. Scappaticci was born in Belfast in 1946. He grew up in the markets area of the city. His father, Danny Scappaticci, was an Italian immigrant. He had settled in Belfast in the 1920s. He is remembered locally for running an ice cream business. Scappaticci's mother, Mary Murray, was from a nationalist family. He joined the Provisionals in August 1969. This was shortly after loyalist attacks on nationalist areas of Belfast at the very start of the Troubles. He rose quickly in the organisation. He became officer commanding of the markets area, and he became known to the authorities as a key Republican paramilitary operative in Belfast. On August 9, 1971, British soldiers raided his home. He was arrested and interned without trial. This was part of Operation Demetrius, the mass internment sweep that began that same day. He was held first at Crumlin Road Jail. He was later moved to Long Kesh. There he encountered other men who would go on to lead the Republican movement, including Gerry Adams and Ivor Bell. His release date from internment is a source of confusion. Some accounts have him released in January 1974, returning at once to active service. Other sources place his final release in December 1975, when the British government formally ended internment without trial across Northern Ireland. It is possible both are true and that he was released, then re-interned before that final mass release. But the record on this point is not entirely clear. What is clear, however, is that by the mid-1970s, Scappaticci had become a trusted figure within the organisation. At some point, he was trusted enough by the leadership to be given a key role in the internal security unit. This was one of the most feared roles in the entire movement. The internal security unit investigated suspected informers. It extracted confessions. In many documented cases, it arranged for those found guilty to be, to put it euphemistically, permanently removed from the nationalist community. Working inside that unit gave Scappaticci access to an extraordinary amount of information. He would have known the Irish Republican Army structure, its personnel, and its operations. There are several competing theories about why Scappaticci turned informer. No single explanation has ever been confirmed, and even the most careful accounts treat it as an open question. The first theory involves a brush with the law. Some accounts suggest he first came onto the radar of police over a tax fraud matter. That early leverage, it is claimed, opened the door to a much larger role. The second theory is blackmail. This version holds that intelligence handlers had compromising material on him, which it is claimed left him open to pressure. The third theory is personal grievance. This is the version most often repeated. Scappaticci, it is said, offered his services to British intelligence after a serious beating. Fellow Irish Republican Army members attacked him, following a row over an affair with another man's wife. The fourth theory is money. Scappaticci is reported to have received as much as £80,000 a year from his handlers. Some accounts describe him as a walk-in. That means he volunteered his services rather than being coerced into them. He did not need to be blackmailed, he just needed to be bribed. Then there is a psychological theory. Some commentators go further than circumstances alone. They suggest that his decision to start informing is explained by his personality rather than by any single event. One writer described him as a psychopath. Others who knew him described a brooding, menacing presence. Scappaticci may have enjoyed the double life itself, the secrecy, the power over other people's fates, and the attention of British intelligence may have appealed to something deeper in his character. His formal recruitment into the British Army's Force Research Unit is usually placed around 1978. Some accounts put it a year later, in 1979. Even that date is not settled with certainty. But one thing can be said with confidence. Whatever brought him in, and whenever it happened, he went on to hold the most sensitive position ever held by a British informer within the Republican movement. Scappaticci passed on an extraordinary volume of intelligence. He gave his handlers deep insight into the IRA's Northern Command. This covered how the organization actually operated day to day. His role inside internal security placed him at the center of several key processes. He took part in vetting new recruits joining the organization. He debriefed IRA members after their release from police custody. He also sat in on court-martials, the internal trials held when members were accused of breaking the organization's own rules. Scappaticci's role as Britain's most valued informer began to unravel with a strange incident that occurred in January 1990. The Internal Security Unit, including Scappaticci, was interrogating a suspected informer called Sandy Lynch in a house in Belfast. The RUC raided the house and arrested several Republicans, including Danny Morrison, who was at the time a leading member of Sinn Féin. Scappaticci had left the property before the police arrived and therefore avoided arrest. Lynch himself was a genuine agent, not merely a suspect. He was an informer for the RUC's special branch. The RUC knew their agent was in danger and conducted the raid to rescue him. The RUC, however, had no idea that Scappaticci, one of the men conducting the interrogation, was also a British agent. The irony was that the house that night held two men leading double lives at once. One was interrogating the other, and both were secretly working for the British state. Lynch survived his ordeal. Police reached him in time. He later gave evidence in court and described the interrogation in detail before entering a witness protection program. When later questioned by police, Lynch said he had recognized Scappaticci's voice. His presence in the house was later confirmed forensically through fingerprints. The RUC had watertight evidence of Scappaticci's involvement in the detention and interrogation of Lynch. Yet somehow, he managed to avoid prosecution. It didn't make sense, and this made some of his Belfast comrades very uneasy. It opened up the possibility that he was being protected by the authorities. He fled to the Republic of Ireland and remained in hiding for almost 3 years. He returned to Belfast in October 1992 and was eventually arrested by the RUC. By then, an alibi was in place. He told police he had been at the property doing television repair work. The homeowner backed up the story. The alibi held up, no charges followed, and he was released. After the Lynch affair, the leadership no longer had confidence in Scappaticci. He was now a marked man, viewed with real suspicion by his own comrades. Like so much of this story, there is uncertainty about dates. The exact point at which the Irish Republican Army eased him out is not entirely clear. Some accounts suggest he had already fallen out with the leadership by 1991 while he was still on the run. Others suggest the leadership only removed him from the Internal Security Unit closer to his return in 1992. What is agreed is that his standing within the organisation never recovered after this episode. In 1995, his British handlers recognised that he could no longer provide any useful information and formally stood him down as an agent. Yet he did not meet the same fate that so many other suspected informers met at the hands of the very unit he had once led. His seniority almost certainly explains why. Scappaticci was not a junior volunteer whose case could be dealt with quietly. He had spent years at the top of internal security and knew the identities and methods of those around him in intimate detail. Moving against him openly risked exposing just how deeply the organisation had been compromised. For a movement that depended on secrecy and discipline to function, confronting that reality directly may simply have carried too high a cost. Scappaticci was named publicly in May 2003 as the British agent codenamed Stakeknife. The claim did not come from a single leak. It emerged from a combination of insider sources and journalists. Around the same time, separate press coverage cited British military sources. They confirmed the identification directly. Scappaticci's response to these allegations was initially restrained. It was not an outright denial of every particular. When reporters approached him, he chose his words carefully. He said he had been involved in the Republican movement years earlier, but he had no recent involvement. He later held a press conference at his solicitor's office. There, he rejected the Stakeknife allegation more fully. At the time, Sinn Féin described the reports as British misinformation. Nevertheless, Scappaticci prudently decided to leave Northern Ireland for England. He is believed to have lived there under state protection for the rest of his life. He maintained his denial until his death in 2023. The posture within Republican and nationalist communities has shifted. Solicitors representing alleged victims have pushed for formal government acknowledgement of Scappaticci's identity as Stakeknife, calling it a necessary step toward reconciliation. Eventually, concern about the role of Stakeknife forced the authorities to launch an investigation called Operation Canova. Its final report, published in 2024, concluded that an agent codenamed Stakeknife did operate at a senior level within the Internal Security Unit and was very likely involved in a significant number of deaths connected to the unit's activities. It also found that Stakeknife probably took more lives than he saved. The report did not provide any information on the identity of this high-ranking agent. In February 2026, the case moved beyond journalism and investigation and into the official political record. The Taoiseach, Micheál Martin named Scappaticci as Stakeknife during a session of the Dáil. It was about as close to formal state confirmation as this case has ever received. The British government has still made no official statement of its own.